Hi there. Welcome back to InvestHer podcast. I'm Anne Ravanona, your host and funding friend, and I'm so glad you're here. InvestHer podcast exists for one reason: to share the real, unfiltered stories of funded women founders, investors, and ecosystem changemakers from around the world, and to give them the visibility and airtime they deserve. Because here's what we know: women are building extraordinary businesses. Women and men are writing checks and leading funds that invest in women founders. And yet, their stories are still too often missing from the conversation. We're here to change that. Every episode, I sit down with someone who's in the trenches of building, funding, or backing women-founded ventures. And we talk about the real stuff, the pivots, the rejections, the fundraising lessons nobody tells you about, and the wins, because there are plenty of those too. Whether you're a founder navigating your first funding round, an investor looking to do better, or simply someone who believes we need more women building, scaling, and investing in women-founded businesses, this podcast is for you. Now, I can't wait for you to hear this. Let's dive in. Melinda Wittstock has built 5 companies, raised $20 million, and she still shows up every day fighting for the women who come after her. But here's what I love most about her story. She kept building even when the money wasn't there, even when the VCs had empty funds, even when she was a decade ahead of the market. Today, she's the founder of Padopolo, an AI platform rewiring the economics of podcasting for creators, listeners, and advertisers. And she's becoming the investor she never had. By the way, she was one of the winners of our 2024 pitch competition, and you'll understand why when you listen to this podcast. Whether you're a founder, a funder, or someone who needs proof that backing yourself is always worth it, let's get into it. Welcome, Melinda. How are you?
Hi, Anne. I'm great. Thank you for having me on. I'm so excited about our conversation.
I am so excited too, because for our listeners, I am so excited because Melinda is a serial entrepreneur. So you're not just going to get the funding journey and everything, the behind the scenes of what she's building with Padopolo, because you're going to learn it's a super company. And what they do is very, very interesting to all those podcasters, advertisers, corporates, people who need to connect with audiences. But she's going to explain it much better than me. But because you're a serial entrepreneur, this is so cool. We're getting like 5 for the price of 1, Melinda. Is it 5 companies you have founded? Is that correct?
That's right. In fact, my kids, when they were little and they would hear that I was a serial entrepreneur, they misunderstood that and they thought I ran the Cheerios company.
Oh, that's so cute. I love it. I love that so much. Okay, so take us back to the beginning. How did you become an entrepreneur? When did it all start, and what was the first company? And then walk us through the subsequent steps.
I think it was in my DNA, Anne, because when I was almost 6 years old, I went out with my black lab to go door to door demanding prepayment for my show. Okay.
Love it. Oh my God. Prepayment. That's sophisticated.
Prepayment.
Wow.
And I don't even know where I got that idea. It was just obvious to me, right? Like, I have expenses. I've got to get the music together, and I have costume changes, and I have all this sort of stuff. I need to. And literally, I went around the neighborhood, and I think my lab was sort of my enforcer. Do you know what I mean? Like, come on, pay her, right? And I came home with a lot of money, because I was charging $1, and everybody paid because it was a cute little girl, I guess.
Of course.
Yeah. So like no one's going to say no. And I came home and I asked my dad where we could get 100 chairs. And he was like, "What?"
That is amazing.
So, and so that was the beginning. I think I've always been entrepreneurial, like, but I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was. Like, so I never set out in my life to be an entrepreneur. I think I just was one. And, I did all kinds of little side hustles and things, as a teenager, where I, made money. I put myself through college, those sorts of things. When I was on my student newspaper, because I went to McGill University and had a daily student newspaper, and the paper was struggling with money because we weren't getting enough money from the student council and such. So I said, why don't we start an advertising department? And then I kind of quickly realized that, just the campus distribution is not big enough to really support an advertising model. So why don't we figure out a way to be distributed citywide in Montreal? But why would anyone read a student newspaper? I know. Let's create the first English language entertainment listings and food listings in the city, which we did, which made the paper very popular. So we increased its print run and its distribution. And we had a really lucrative ad department. So I would spend the day, like I'd go to class and then I'd go out and sell ads and then I'd write my stories.
I love it.
Okay. So, I mean, but I didn't think I was being an entrepreneur. I didn't really know what that was. My career, really, my early career was in excuse me, my early career was in journalism. And I became the business correspondent, and ultimately the media correspondent of the Times of London. When I was 22 years old, I joined the paper.
Yeah.
And I had the experience, which was great, of being able to interview Steve Jobs.
Wow.
With Richard Branson, shadowing as a reporter. And because I was naturally an entrepreneur, I was a sponge. Like I was just learning everything from all the people in the business world that I was interviewing, and ultimately in the media as well. So that really stood me in good stead by the time I got around finally to launching my first real company.
Amazing. Wow. Like, I love it. Like, there's not very many people that you're the first on our podcast who can mention off those two names off the drop of your tongue to say that you've interviewed both. That's so, so cool. And I love both. I know Steve was, Steve was Steve. I mean, you met him. I've seen him on stage and we went to, like, we're super Mac maniacs and we went to see him at Macworld in Paris. So we saw him when he launched the iPhone. Pretty cool. So that was really good. But amazing. So tell us then about your first company. So you went straight from college into setting up your company, or did you have after the journalism? After the Times?
I was a journalist for a while. So I was on the Times of London. I broke a lot of big stories. As a result of breaking all these really big stories, I became a TV pundit. And then I got recruited by the Financial Times to create Financial Times Television and host that program, which I grew as a co-executive producer and the host into pretty massive distribution with a deal with CNBC in Europe and Asia.
Yeah.
And from there and that success, I got recruited to the BBC where inexplicably, I mean, I'm not English. I was one of their main news anchors of BBC World Television. And then I started creating shows for the BBC. And in fact, I created a show for the BBC that grew to an audience of 20 million people around the world, out of the New York bureau. Very entrepreneur. I mean,
you were an
I was like an intrapreneur.
It's oozing out of you. I love it. Okay. So when did you take the leap then from BBC
Well, I was anchoring for, I think it was at that time, let's see, I moved back like from London to New York and I was anchoring for a little while for ABC News and then for MSNBC and CNBC. And I was getting it wasn't enough for me to be reading prompter. You know what I mean? I had like really felt that I had done it. And then 9/11 came along. And I remember thinking to myself, gosh, everybody's talking about our democracy. It's so important, right? How can we maintain our democracy? And I realized a lot of people weren't voting. And my journalist mind said, oh, it's because political news coverage is really bad. It's not really serving people. It's not involving them in the process. So my first company was called Capital News Connection. Based on the principle that all politics is local and that if it was reported in a way that was relevant to people's daily lives on a personal level, on a local level, people would be more engaged. That company grew to serve 300 public radio stations within a year with localized coverage, moving on to serve like, the commercial television stations, digital news properties, and such. We had a 3 million daily audience just after a year.
Amazing.
And the real innovation, there was a lot of technological innovation in that, but being able to figure out a business model where you could localize at scale. And that was the real innovation that allowed us to do a really award-winning content at a fraction of the cost to run a regular newsroom, while at the same time winning loads of awards. And I ran that company for, I guess, 10 years. And in that period, I got really interested in technology
Mm-hmm.
and technology and computer assisted journalism and all these sorts of things. And, creating apps. And I created an app called Ask Your Lawmaker, where anybody could ask any question of their senator or representative in the US Congress and vote the questions up the order. And our accredited journalists would go and get those questions answered for people to comment on, share, ask follow-up questions and such. That app grew to 3 million users in just 8 months.
Wow.
And that's at the point where I was, coming to the end of, I wanted to do my next company. So sold Capital News Connection. And went from there to really deep diving into technology. And that's really around the time that my work in the beginnings of AI really, and I think uniquely AI from a journalistic perspective, which is very different than how an engineer approaches it. We can talk about that a little bit later, but I think that's one of the really key differentiators in all my companies. So like 2010, I'm starting to work on natural language processing, probabilistic models, kind of, natural, unsupervised machine learning, which is the kind of precursor of AI, and these language models with this perspective of a journalist seeking truth. Yeah. And so that was really, and then all the different companies have been really at this intersection of media and technology.
Amazing. And so, what was the name of that company? Then take us through the other one. So just kind of
so the first one was Capital News Connection.
Yeah.
And then the next company was called News It. And I realize now that News It was a bleeding edge company. Okay. And it was well ahead of its time, because one of the things and I'm a visionary, and one of the things that I had noticed about social media, which was, I love social media. I loved its potential, but I also saw the potential of the filter bubble being a really bad thing for democracy, for truth seeking and such. And I saw that very early on. And I had this whole idea of involving people in in journalism, because traditional media models were breaking at that time. No newsroom was really big enough. And what could we do with crowdsourcing and algorithmically? What could we do to really ascertain not only the relevance of content to somebody from a recommendation engine kind of perspective, but how could we understand the reliability or the probability that crowdsourced content was accurate. So in effect, 2010, 2011, I'm solving the fake news problem with News It, which was one of the first crowdsourced mobile apps, grew this to 500,000 people creating content. I was innovating the mobile UI, because don't forget, Facebook hadn't even gotten that right yet. Instagram hadn't even launched. This was a crowdsourced platform where you could upload photos, video,
Wow.
whatnot.
Yeah.
It was very sophisticated. And at the back end, we were using, the beginnings of AI and probabilistic models and all these different things to be able to kind of ascertain and rank whether content was relevant or reliable. Now, here's the thing. It was so hard to raise money for this company because it was ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Now, it would really, I think people would really see the need for that company.
Yeah.
But, it's like 15 years early.
Yeah.
But here's how the investor conversations would go, which is kind of funny.
I love it.
I would be in a room with a major investor, like some of the early people on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. And they'd say, well, this is really great, Melinda. Somebody's going to do it. And I'm like,
are you looking at it?
Like, I am doing it. I have 500,000 users and whatnot. And they'd say, well, you don't really fit our pattern. And I said, that's interesting, because we use pattern recognition technology, and I still wasn't getting it. And finally, they would say things like, well, look, there's a lot of risk in this, because you're banking it all on mobile. What makes you think mobile is going to be big? Well, there's these studies by Gartner and like this and that and whatever, right? Like it really is the future. Like everybody's going to have one of these things in their pocket, so that's why we're going mobile. And I'd say, okay, fine. But if you have, say, even if you're successful and you have lots of people using it, and I was like, I'm reminding you, I have 500,000 people
already using it,
$150,000 invested in the company, and I have 500,000 people using this thing. I'm happy, right? So like I've proven that I can get users, and they're like, okay, fine. So even if you get users, you're going to have so many people, your costs are going to be crazy. How are you going to manage that? And then I would say, well, there's this new thing called the cloud. And then the conversation would be, well, what makes you think the cloud is going to be big? I'd be like, oh my God. Anyway, and I walked away from some of those meetings thinking, let's see, I don't fit the pattern. So I didn't go to MIT, Harvard, Stanford. I did not drop out of any of those schools. I do not have a garage. I'm living in New York City. I don't have a garage. I don't eat ramen noodles because there are too many carbs. It was really, really tough. And I mean, I love that company because it was so successful, even though it ultimately wasn't, because we never got funded. Like we just never could do it. And I ended up pivoting that company into another one called Verifeed, which used the same sort of back-end technologies, but applied it to the entire Twitter fire hose and, social conversations on Facebook and such to help people find their, lead gen and whatnot, their ideal customers. And before the influencer was a thing, we were identifying micro influencers for companies and such. And that was a successful company. We did well with that. I ultimately sold that, but I didn't love that company. And we were under a lot of pressure to become more of an agency. Like, can you do our social media for us and that kind of thing, where it was actually really a technology company. Also, really, it was hard to raise money for that one as well. It grew almost entirely bootstrapped on revenue alone. And, a lot of enterprise ARR type things. And then when I sold that company, I took a break to really think, what do I really want to do? And I kind of found my media roots and discovered, podcasting originally as a pay it forward. Like I wanted to create the podcast I wish I'd had as a female founder early on. Like, how can I really help other women? And that grew into beyond a podcast into a business of, this is where I became the kind of internet marketer version of myself, right? Where I had retreats and like membership courses and, one-on-one trainings and this whole thing around, mentoring women to really succeed. And that was kind of cool for a while. And, I ran retreats. I did all of that. I learned quite a lot, through that company. But that doing a podcast was really what led me to Podopolo, because I realized very early on that there was a structural problem that prevented podcasters from, growing their audience, getting the attention that their great content deserved, and let alone making money. Like 98% of podcasters don't qualify for ad revenue. Their audiences will never be big enough to fit the way the advertising industry was looking at podcasting. Podcasts convert at a really high rate. And just through that experience, because at one point I felt like I had all these additional businesses to support my podcast, even though it was a good, the whole Wings business was good and it was profitable and such. It was never going to be a big scalable exit type company. It was a good lifestyle business in a way, right? But it wasn't really me. I wanted to do my next like really big thing. And I saw that opportunity with Padopolo to take all the learnings of Capital News Connection, Newsit, Verifeed, doing the podcast Wings and whatnot, and really leverage that learning to really grow this amazing company, Padopolo. And so that's where it all comes together.
I love it. And I think it's thank you for sharing the journey all the way, because I think that's super important for all of everybody to hear that it's not a straight path. And I love the way you say, I've taken all the learnings all the way through. And as we were chatting before we went live, you were saying that over the course of those different companies in different shapes and form, you've raised about 20 million over the course of all those companies. So you've got some t-shirts involved in the fundraising process. I'm going to ask you about that in a minute. But before that, let us circle back. Tell us more about Padopolo. So when did you set it up? And tell us, how do you serve the different, users of Padopolo?
Yeah, so I first really had the idea during the pandemic. And as with my own experience in podcasting and the frustration of like, God, it's so hard to, build an audience and such and be discovered, I started talking to other podcasters who had the same problem. And I thought, okay, so the podcasters aren't being served. I have an idea for how to do that, but what about the listeners? Are the listeners being served? And I discovered that a lot of listeners were having trouble discovering new podcasts. Search and a lot of the, Apple, Spotify didn't have good recommendation engines, things like that. And a lot of listeners said they wanted to be able to talk with their friends about a podcast that they were listening to, at the same time, or have that ability to connect in community around a podcast. And then I started looking at the advertiser side, and I started to realize that advertisers were really being shortchanged in this equation as well, because they didn't have the data. And that the data became the issue of this three-sided market, in effect. That if you could get that right, which I knew I could with AI and all the things that I'd proven previously, then you could really not only add billions to an ecosystem, but also save billions and really help all parts of that process. So in 2020, I started doing, I did a lot of in-depth research to begin with. Like, I think when you're much younger, you're just like, this is a great idea, and I'm just going to go with it, right? In this case, I was, I was a little bit cautious. I was like, okay, I've got another one of these kind of shoot for the moon billion-dollar companies in me. So I'm going to make sure that I get this right. So I spent a lot of 2020 on that kind of research and like, how exactly would we do this? And really, first line of code on what was a Padopolo, started with a Padopolo mobile app that was social. First line of code was written in like March 2021. With AI in the back end powering, recommendations, an automatic ingest engine that brought in all this content and was able to also understand, as we had more users on the platform, correlate user interests with and behavior with what was going on topically, on the podcast. And it started in almost entirely as a consumer facing app. And along the journey, as we raised a little bit of money here, a little bit of money there, a little bit of money there, probably all in about $2.5 million has been invested into Padopolo so far.
Yeah.
We were co-creating with our customers, with podcasters, with listeners, and with advertisers. And with the AI, because our AI, I mean, we do use some of the different large language models, but we have our own proprietary AI as well. And we literally have created our own model, which is a small language model. I mean, it's 6 million podcasts. That's 22% of the internet in terms of time spent on internet, 22%. So we have this, it's not small, but it's a quality and contextual language model where we really understand what's going on topically in this podcast. And we had this aha moment last year where we were thinking, gosh, we have a really great enterprise solution. We have really great SaaS tools for creators. That might be a much better go to market ultimately, even though we have the app and people love the app and that's going well. This other opportunity was just a little bit of a pivot there. It was, I think, sometimes also when you're in a situation where last year, really over the last couple of years, once interest rates started rising, very, very difficult to raise money. And so we had to think very carefully about what's the fastest path to revenue. And growing a consumer app where the revenue is going to come only when that blitzkrieg kind of like split scale that Reid Hoffman talks about, like that model is very difficult for women entrepreneurs because we never get that kind of money to open ourselves to be, we're capable of building an Amazon, right? Or building that, but you need buckets of money. And women founders I've never met one yet that's had that kind of backing. And so we do get forced into different ways, and we can still get to the same destination, but it ends up having to be a different route. So that really sunk in with me last year. I was like, okay, we're going to have to find a different way to grow. And ultimately that delay or the difficulty in raising money, focused the mind on what we could do on the enterprise side and revenue. As a result, we have 6-figure ARR deals, right? Recurring revenue. We're at a stage right now as we wait for our funding round, which we really, we do need it now. That will allow us to just do the final productization, of a lot of our AI. And I haven't even gotten to the blockchain part yet, which is I'm really super excited about. But and really bring all that to market, with the added benefit that through our partners, we're bringing listeners to the platform, we're bringing podcasters to the platform, the podcasters are bringing their listeners to the platform, etc. But we're making nice monthly and annual recurring revenue as we do that consumer play.
I love it. I love it. And that's smart to have both, well, the three sides. It's super interesting to have the consumer, the SaaS, and the enterprise model. So you're just very solid when you have it all, and you can lean on the enterprise and the SaaS while you build up the consumer when you have more money to plow into the marketing, because that's what it's all about. It's like, how do you get eyes on the traffic on it, basically? It's so expensive.
Exactly. I mean, it's a classic flywheel.
Yeah.
Where you architect a business where you think, okay, if I do this one thing, is there a multiplicity of outcomes from this one action?
Yeah.
If the answer is yes, then okay, good, right? And so and this is the way my mind works. I always look for these points of leverage. And I'm not a linear thinker.
Not at all. You can tell.
This conversation. So I like to see these chocolate peanut butter things. Like if we do this one, and that's the beauty of our AI, because this one thing that we do allows variously, really wildly improved podcast search and discovery and recommendations.
Yeah.
It allows generative AI content for the podcasters that save them time and money.
Yeah.
Because it really, you could think of it as a very elegant repurposing engine, because, you have your transcript from the podcast, and then that immediately gets parsed into like audio clips, video clips, captions. You can have real-time captioning, show notes, social posts, whether it's like a Twitter thread or like an Instagram reel or whatever it is, workbooks to make what people are learning on a podcast actionable, custom prompts, you name it, all of it, right? And that's just getting more and more and more sophisticated as well. And then the other piece for the advertiser is, because we're able to correlate what we know about the audience, their behavior, their interests and such demographics, with what's going on a podcast episode in real time and over time. We know exactly what episode an ad should be placed in, but not only that, but where that ad should be placed in the context of that show to really increase its likelihood of higher conversions, while also protecting the brand with assured brand safety, which has been an issue in podcasts, because people, again, advertisers have been blind to what's actually going on. So you like place an ad and you're because podcasts, they go all over the place in terms of, it may be about entrepreneurship, but on that particular day, they might be talking about an industry that you don't want your brand associated with, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So it's one thing that does all these different things.
And from the enterprise side, that's the advertisers. Is it really? That's that leg? Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
Yes. Well, so with advertisers, for instance, but also podcast hosting companies.
I
mean, really anybody on that, any business that's really supporting, or a podcast network, they need this data and these systems, right? So we have an API that's customizable and fully embeddable, with the ability to, create, custom dashboards and things like that. So say it's a podcast network and they want to know what's going on with all their podcasts, and they want to get more efficient and more successful and drive higher conversion rates on their advertising, for instance, right? They would leverage this. Podcast hosting company, they can leverage this API for that as well. A lot of hosting companies are also ad networks now, or they partner with ad networks, but they can also use a generative AI piece of it as well for all their, all the podcasts that they host. And likewise, an ad agency. We've even been approached now by PR agencies that look to place guests on podcasts. So which is the best podcast for the guest, and vice versa. So think of it like it's like a matchmaker. It's just a really efficient matchmaker for the whole ecosystem.
I love it. And how does it work? So what's the business model? What do podcasters pay? What do enterprise, and what do listeners, how do they engage?
Yeah. So business model is it's interesting because it's part advertising and sponsorship.
Yeah.
And it's part, recurring revenue from, SaaS, enterprise API, that kind of thing. Right. So listeners don't pay anything currently, although we do have plans that we could do some subscriptions, some different things for listeners, but totally free for listeners. Download the app, start listening, invite your friends. You're going to discover great podcasts. You're going to have a better way to organize your listening, be able to create and share clips across all of social media with one click, sleep timers, all the things, right? Just more feature functionality than Apple or Spotify. It's a really great app. So for the listener, it's, a good listening app and a good social app, right? For the podcaster, it starts out, it's a freemium model. Right. So a podcaster can sign up, and when they go through the process of claiming their podcast is already on Padopolo, which is a mobile and a web app. So their podcast is already there, but they have to authenticate that they own their podcast to be able to start to take advantage. So effectively they sign up, that's free. It gets them a little extra juice in the recommendation engine. It gets them kind of beginner analytics of what's going on in their podcast. And it gets them the beginnings of free ad placement. Well, they don't get ad placement yet, right? On the free level, but they do grow their audience, and they have a whole bunch of different things to help them. Then it's tiered pricing starting at $97 a month that allows the Gen AI tools, ad placement, all the things. It's a graduated, there's different packages depending on like what you want. With each tier up, you get a bigger share of the ad revenue for your podcast. And, more AI, more fancy analytics, more tools, that kind of thing. Right.
Yeah.
And then for the enterprise, for the ad networks and such, that's a lot of those are, enterprise is a kind of long sales cycle, kind of negotiation, depending on what they want, because there's a development on our side and, that kind of thing. And in the context of actually sales to advertising, we partner with ad networks, but one of the use of proceeds of our funding round is to build our own sales team as well and create that whole, ad piece. So we're able to use our technology for the actual ad placement as well, rather than relying on third parties for that.
And I mean, it really is the all-in-one solution for anybody who has to get involved in any way with podcasting. I think it's fantastic. And I love that it's a three-way marketplace. Just 1 second, because I have to close my window and it's slashing rain. We will cut this out, but 1 second, it's coming in. Sorry, Melinda.
Don't worry.
There we are. Apologies. But so I was just saying that it really is an all-in-one solution. I mean, it made me super excited because one of the things is you applied for and won in a key category in the AI deep tech category of the InvestHer Summit global pitch competition, and for a very good reason. I mean, you just shone for the whole jury. It was just like no brainer. This is an amazing company, an amazing product, an amazing founder. It's like you were just streets ahead in the applicants, and we had lots of really good applicants. So it was just great to see, and it was just wonderful to hear the behind the scenes a little bit more from you. And I would love to say to all of everybody listening who has a podcast, who listens to podcasts, or wants to reach the audience of podcasters, check out Padopolo. You will have all the links in the show notes, but you can hear directly from Melinda. This is a labor of love, but more a labor of just leveraging all of the vast experience that she's built and looking at it from a very keen, journalistic, but also systemic and tech. That's what's super interesting. That you're kind of what you built with. It's this magic combo. Yeah, it's a very good combo, a very good combination, which is really, really cool. So now I want us to circle back into your funding journey through all of this. So I don't know if you want to pick up some highlights and lowlights or like war stories from the other experiences, the other companies before you came to Podopolo, or do you want to just focus on Podopolo and what the funding journey has been so far?
Yeah. I mean, I told a little story about Newsit and how hard that was, right? Like that was, a lot of head damage to the point where I was like, okay, that's it. I give up. I'll never get. So with Verifeed, I didn't even really. Oh, sorry. That's my That's my dog.
We can't hear him.
Sorry.
It's all good. Zoom.
Augie likes to be involved in podcasts.
That's
And
so
so he's got very strong opinions.
cool.
Anyway, he's an English cream golden retriever, and he got good at Zoom bombing during the pandemic.
Oh, listen, I have two. I have a corgi and I'm a mix between a corgi and a staffy. So they're quiet at the moment, but don't worry. Zoom is very good at blocking out the high pitch bark. I have the maximum no barking on. So don't worry, we won't hear him.
Well, he's actually the Padopolo mascot. Like, I think his picture is somewhere on our website. So anyone who loves English cream golden retrievers
Oh,
can go to the Padopolo website and you'll see some pictures of Augie.
I love it. I love it. But okay, so circle back. So you had told us some of the war stories. So it actually your experience just with the first company to put you off looking for funding for the next one.
Yeah, well, it did. Yeah, exactly. By the time I got to Verifeed, I was like, oh gosh, there's no point. I'm just going to bootstrap this. And then it was the same thing like with Wings as well. But with Padopolo, it was going to be the type of company that did need funding.
Yeah.
And the board chairman of Verifeed ended up becoming the board chairman and lead investor of Padopolo at that early stage. So that was our seed money. And the relationship was already there. And so that was very helpful for just that kind of seed stage of kind of getting going.
Yeah.
And in the early days, we also got podcasters so excited that a lot of podcasters also invested, albeit at small amounts, like 50 grand here, 100 grand there, 25 grand, whatever. Right. And so all of that was done in the form of convertible notes because we were too early really to do like evaluation or whatnot. So that whole thing has been our funding to date, almost 2.5 million to get to this stage, which is considerably lower, I'm just going to say, than any other AI company, right? Like it's actually, I have to remind myself, it's amazing what we've been able to do with very little. I think that tends to be the case for most female founders, unfortunately.
Yes.
They're forced to be really good and efficient with the use of capital. But on this journey, we've had so many things go wrong with the funding. Like weird experiences. So this has happened to us quite a few times where we've had like a term sheet and really excited and whatnot. And it turns out that the venture fund just never receives their funding.
Oh, geez.
That's happened to us like 6 or 7 times
over
the lifespan of Blue. And it's interesting because it used to be, Anne, and you probably know more about this than me, but it used to be that VCs had their money before they started taking pitches from startups.
Yeah.
Now it's actually quite the reverse. A lot of them get their deal flow and then they go and raise money based on the companies that they've attracted.
They line it up.
Startups don't know.
It's exactly. It's so hard because you're there just, pitching your heart out, not knowing, and on the basis that you're assuming that the money's going to be there when they close it, and then suddenly say, sorry, we don't. And that has happened. Yeah. And what you've described, I know it has happened to some of the funds that I even interviewed in the past, that like they never closed the fund. It was so frustrating for everybody involved. Yeah. Yeah. I've seen it.
And also there's a lot of pretenders. I mean, there's a lot of people around that call themselves investors and they talk a big game and they're like not really real. Like, and so I think for women, it's very important to figure out how to qualify this early on, just like not waste your time. So like I have these little sly ways of saying, so where are you in your fund?
Yeah.
and such, right? And because that's going to make a big difference as well if they're at the beginning of it or the end of it. Anyway, even if they do have money. So like just being really savvy about that. And then, but I think that the toughest thing for us has just been we've for 2 years now, we've had a commitment from one VC that's gone through a whole bunch of different potential LPs. And like, finally, they really were on the right track. And it's I can't really talk about the details of it. It's very, very complicated, but it's essentially a $25 billion fund. Through the repatriation of bonds and such. It's a new way really of raising money, but it's been very complicated. And I have an unusual window into what's actually going on with it just by virtue of, the fact that, our VC, the two VCs now who are funding us from the same source of money, have just been uncommonly transparent with us. And I think in part because it's taken a long time. Anyway, I'm just touching wood because there have been all kinds of delays and hiccups along the way on this one, but we are weeks away from closing. We've got 12 million of the 15 million we're raising kind of committed.
Yeah.
Right. So a little bit of extra on that round. And, just like it's go time for us, because you get to the point where a startup where you've done everything that you can do to really be ready for a very explosive go-to-market. You know your marketing strategy, you know exactly your team, you know exactly what you have to do. You've got all the systems in place and whatnot. That's where we are, but we just need the cash to now run and execute, which we know how to do. Right?
And
so it's kind of like, I feel like this horse at the gate,
And this is it. Like didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was just going to say that the timing is now right, Melinda. You're now at the right place at the right time, not 15 years ahead of it. That's what's, hopefully, because let's just say the force is strong within you, Melinda, and the forces are aligned around you, and this is going to happen. So when is the closing date of, when are you closing your round? Is it the 30th of September or?
Yeah, so it looks like it's mid-September. Capital calls are just about to begin. And so we do have some space on that. So anybody, depending on when this podcast is airing, I mean, because the minute that we're calling that round our super seed, because we're a little bit beyond seed, but we're not quite A. Yeah. The minute that closes, we'll be starting our kind of trumpy for our A round anyway.
And anyway, listen, even if this gets aired a few days after you've closed, it's all good to be oversubscribed and say, that's okay. We can still keep to
exactly.
Like it's all good.
We'll have the conversation with the right investors, because one of the things that I haven't even shared with you, we've talked a lot about the AI, but I think one of the truly disruptive things that we're doing, Anne, is with blockchain. We happen to believe that when you look at the AI landscape and who's really going to win, but also in terms of our society and what's safe or not, or what's ethical or what's not, we believe a decentralized approach to AI is going to be the answer, because a lot of concentration in the hands of only a few that are look like entirely like the same as each other and such. Isn't really the answer. And we believe that blockchain is a necessary component in AI. So when you think of podcasters and you think beyond that to the creator economy as a whole, imagine the change of being able to own your own data, be able to own your own community.
Yeah.
And that power shift. And that's really the big story behind Padopolo. Now, what we're doing with that, I think I'm really excited. In the fall, you'll start to see wallets debut on the Padopolo app. So for the fan, it's a way to automatically accumulate redeemable points towards, access to your favorite podcaster, or a deal with your favorite advertiser, or a social impact donation, like a donation to your favorite, whatever that's going to be, right? Gamified. Now, as fans are being rewarded for doing what they already love to do, like, yay. Podcasters, in the meantime, have a mechanism whereby they can validate and authenticate the ownership of their podcast, and with that, also their own data, in a transparent, interoperable way that really changes this whole ecosystem in a massive way. So that's really where we're going, because we set out really to begin with to really democratize the creator economy. And so that's where we're going.
I love it. I mean, I think that's super exciting. And this is where I say it oozes out of you. It's pulling back from your journalistic ethical roots that you want to be able to have that transparency and quality control over. When you say we have so many downloads and users that are actually verified, it's not some bot that's just, because that's also happening. And so for everybody involved, that you'll be able to say, well, no, these are real users, they're real downloads, and these are the real hits or whatever that you're getting from the advertising, that they are listening to your segment, et cetera, so you can have that full traceability. And I think that's fantastic what you've built and what you are building. I'm super excited. Like, I remember sitting through your pitch during the pitch competition, and I wasn't judging because I wasn't allowed to, but I was listening in and because we had the jury of investors, and yeah, it was just so fabulous to listen to you, because it's just, and like, I have a podcast and I had a million questions afterwards, like, we're on the podcast, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I want everybody to know about it. But I love the way in your sources of funding and throughout your journey, there's been a real mix of like leveraging your past experiencing the new tech, being visionary, being so far ahead, but each time leveraging, on top of your previous experiences, your pivots, bringing it all together. And that's what's super exciting. And I really do believe that this is the convergence. And obviously, if you're in the right place, and it's so great to hear that you've already got 12 million of your 15 million, confirmed, because that's what we need, to have more super success stories like that to be heard, and to hear more, tech founders to say, hey, you can do this, women founders in particular, and to be at the convergence and say, and again, you are being a visionary, and you're doing a triple-sided marketplace. A double-sided is not enough. You happen to do triple-sided, and then say, and on top of that, we're going to do blockchain with AI. Why not? Like, excuse me, it's so cool. It's so cool, Melinda. I'm super excited listening to you.
I think, and my theory is, every now and again, right? I realize about myself that I do tend to pick hard things, right? I don't know. I don't know what that's about. There's some deep subconscious, who knows, right? Okay. I lie down on a sofa for that one, but I do tend to pick, hard things. But on the other hand, you could look at it, any business is hard, right? And any business is going to be hard because the market's constantly changing. There are a whole bunch of things beyond your control, or like new entrants, or all kinds of, so many things that can go wrong. Some of them of your own making, a lot of them not. Like, it's just circumstance or timing or what. Every business is hard, right? And so at the end of the day, just walking through these challenges, because they're always going to be these challenges. I think for women in particular, a couple things are really important, is to realize that we're really not alone in this. And that's why I think what you're doing is so important. And the more transparent we are, and like with each other about, like, actually, it's one of the reasons I'm so transparent on this podcast, sharing this journey, because it's really hard for everybody. And I think sometimes as women, we look at the other women who have succeeded and we think, oh, well, I must be less than because they did, right? And no, like, everybody has this. And so the more that we can really support each other, just in that emotional sense, I think is really important. But beyond that, a real passion of mine is encouraging women to really think about and get good at, get educated about, and actually commit to investing in other female founders.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the thing that's really going to change what has, like, venture is broken for women. I mean, you could argue that venture is broken, period, but like, it's really broken for women. It just doesn't work. So what are the new ways? How can we put our heads together to figure out how to do this? Because frankly, women and also minority founders, diverse founders, spot opportunities that other people miss. We have a different perspective. We're really good at leaders when we really leverage a lot of the things that are I don't know, women, just the emotional intelligence or the empathy or just our intuition, all those things, right? We tend to be very good leaders when we believe in ourselves and very more collaborative. I think that's also the way the economy is going. So I'm just very passionate about, certainly by the time Padopolo exits, my next act is as an investor. I'm already kind of really learning the ropes of that as well. and, bringing, I'm a kind of a junior partner in a venture firm, actually our board chairman's firm. And he, by the way, is committed to investing in women. And I'm really learning the ropes of VC in that case, as I go. And I really think the more we can get confident about investing and taking exit money and plowing that into other women, or just even buying each other's products. So
yes. Oh my God. I mean, you're singing to the choir here, because that's exactly what we're doing through FundHer on Global InvestHer. So FundHer is where we have two-sided marketplace. So let's say it's a directory of diverse deal flow. So it's basically a search engine for investors to find diverse women founders. Boom. So instead of saying, I don't know where to look, come on FundHer. I'm part of Global InvestHer. And then the second part is access to markets, which is buy from her. So that's so important, because I totally agree. Like, I've been working in this industry for the past 11 years. And again, like you, 11 years ago, nobody was talking about funding women founders. Everybody thought I was crazy. And they're like, what are you talking about? There's no problem. What's it? Oh, it's just a woman thing. So then it's like, it's been such a journey. To your point, when you're too far in advance, up until now, there's a lot of educating that you have to do. It's exactly what you described for your first two companies. You had to educate because you were so far ahead, and they were like, well, they didn't understand what you were doing, the problem you were solving, or how you were doing it. It was like all of those things, which I totally get, because that has happened to us as well, because we were so far ahead. Now there are other plays, which is great. And I'm like, fabulous. Like, there's $1.7 trillion funding gap. There is room for many of us. And I want us to be many. I want to be put out of business, and we don't need to exist to connect founders with funders. But it's so important what you just said. And I'm so glad that you've described your serial founder journey into funder and into an investor. That is so important, because for me, that is the virtuous cycle that we showcase on our website as well. It's like, that is it. It's like the virtuous cycle is we help more women founders get funded. They have a successful exit, or as they are building their companies, become investors in other women. And alongside, we convince more male investors to invest in women and increase that cycle and increase that pool and increase the table. That's how we do it.
And even if you don't have the money to be an investor yet, there are things to do. Like I realized when I launched my podcast, Wings of Inspired Business, it was really with almost 900 episodes now. It was with a mission not only to affirm and acclaim the female entrepreneurial journey, but to really lift as we climb, hence Wings, right?
Yeah, nice.
And in doing so, creating a platform that really encouraged people to buy from women. So as of this, like, I started in 2017, I've driven more than $4 million of revenue to female founded businesses.
Wow.
Just through the act of doing that podcast, right? Wow. So it has been like an investment of sorts, even though I'm not getting a return.
Yeah.
It feels good, all the same. So there are things that we can do. And if we step up to be the change that we want to see in the world, then it just, it inspires more women to think, yes, like we don't have to be in scarcity. We can be in abundance. When another woman succeeds, that helps everybody. It doesn't mean that because she succeeded, you can't, right? Like, that old thing that I think so many women have been stuck in historically. I see that beginning to change, but really being in that place of abundance is critical.
I love it. So what would be your key tips, your key do's and don'ts for women founders who are about to go on the funding journey in particular? What would be the key do's and the key don'ts?
Okay. So don't get discouraged. I mean, I know it's easier said than done. It's really hard. Like it's hard. So there's a number of different things I think to get right here. The thing that I see most women do, and I had to recover from this myself as well, nobody is doing you a favor by investing in your company. Like, you should not be showing up psychologically with a begging bowl, like, oh, please, please, please. because you're giving them an opportunity. You're doing all the work. You're taking all the risk. It's you that like are sacrificing like to grow your business, right? It's so in other words, know your value. I think this is very, very important for women. And to get that psychological balance right, not least of which you're going to be more likely to succeed in your pitch because nobody wants to, like no investor is looking at your thing as a charity, right? They're looking for you to know your numbers, know what kind of return, like just be on top of that, but get the psychology of the pitch right. Like it's confidence and whatnot. And that confidence, you kind of can't fake it. So you've got to go through this process of learning, right? Like you're going to make mistakes along the way. The other thing I would say is like, just figure out how to forgive yourself for those mistakes. God knows I've made so many. And I still have this dialogue with myself because I'm like, oh man, I could have done it better or whatever, right? I think as women, we're really hard on ourselves. And so I'm saying this to myself as much as I'm saying this to any other woman. It's really important just to take all those failures, large, small, micro, just as an opportunity to learn, and be curious and talk to lots of people. You're going to get a lot of no's, right? And learn from my thing. Make sure that the fund actually has funding.
Yeah, for sure. But how do you do that? Because they, to be fair, so many investors string you along. So, I mean, and also not to be too hard on yourself as well. I mean, they're very good at putting on the masks because they also do talk a big talk. So how can you help? What advice would you give to founders to kind of what's the lie detector in there?
It's really interesting. I mean, it's easier in a way to do in person than on Zoom. And I mean, I think the pandemic really set us back in fundraising because so much about fundraising is relationship. And it's just much harder to create relationships on Zoom. So like a lot of that dance is just like getting to know people, right? Because I would also say a really good thing for a founder to do is, okay, so you take a meeting with the VC or you're thinking of a VC, look at who their portfolio company, right? Call up the founders. What are they like when the, whatever, the proverbial hits the fan, right? Like,
exactly.
How do they be, that kind of thing? How do they treat you? Look and see, have they invested in are there any female CEOs on their list of portfolio companies? Just do your research, ahead of time. And then there's other kind of questions that you can ask, like, okay, so, what's the size of your fund? Where are you in your fund? And I have in asking that question to a couple of folks now, I've saved myself a lot of time because they've actually said, well, fund 2 is kind of closed out now. We're in the middle of raising fund 3. It's like, okay, when do you think you will have fund 3, right? Exactly. Some of them are honest, some of them are not. But if you ask that question, and that also I think it gets their respect too, because it shows that you actually know, you actually understand, like, the game, their world, right? So in other words, you should be qualifying them as much as they're qualifying you.
Exactly.
So come with the right questions. The other thing too is in the realm of not taking it personally, some of the people who are the worst in this case, right, where they don't have a fund or they're being the big ego usually guy, right? They'll find some way to, because they don't have money, they'll find some other way to say it's not a great investment or whatever, right? And it could be total BS. And so feedback from investors, you've got to take with a little bit of a grain of salt. I've seen a lot of founders, particularly women, get like blown off course with the last pitch meeting they took because they got feedback from somebody saying, oh no, you should be doing this instead. And so they pivot, but it's not the right. You can get overcoached and you can lose your North Star. You can lose that direction and realize that people don't necessarily have your best interests at heart when they're giving you advice. You've got to be really good at qualifying that as well.
I love it. Really sound advice. And what would be your last message to our listeners, Melinda?
Just, for women, just believe in yourself and be true to yourself.
Yes.
Right. I mean, just in the pattern recognition of me of interviewing 900 female founders who built 7, 8, and 9-figure businesses, and like everybody's had the following issues. And I'd take it all down to mindset, because entrepreneurship is an inner game. It's like what we kind of manifest and whatnot. Like we all have these personal subconscious beliefs. They could be about money. They could be about our own value, or our sense of, do we deserve success? Like all these things. And they manifest in all kinds of weird ways. Like I've seen women just not wanting to look at their numbers because maybe in 5th grade, someone told them girls are bad at math, or it could be that their parents argued about money all the time. So they think that, they want money, but they secretly don't. Or, right. Or they don't ask for the sale. You know what I mean? They're good at planning, but like not actually, or it's like, okay, I'll take all those photos for my Instagram promotion and stuff when I lose 10 pounds, all that kind of stuff. For just, man, there should be an AA for perfectionists.
Yes.
Perfectionism is the thing that holds back female founders more than anything else. It results in like procrastination, not co-creating with customers. Like perfect is the enemy of the good in this case, for sure. And I think women fall into this because we're so busy proving that we're good and we're worthy and we're, valuable and whatnot, that in the time that we're doing that, we can miss opportunities. So it's okay to be authentic, real, ask for help. Oh my God. And the last one, be able to receive help. Right. Right. And because we need to develop that muscle more about asking and receiving as well.
Yes. Totally.
I can go on.
I love it. No, but that's so good. That's so good. I mean, and I love particularly what you said about like, what women manifest are those subconscious beliefs. Because as you say, even when you look at the money belief, when you unwrap it, it's like, I want to make money, but I don't want to look at my numbers, or I don't want to make more money, and I don't want to be too successful. And blah, blah, blah. Oh my gosh, so resonates so much.
Underpricing. Like I was doing with my investor lens, I was looking at a bunch of startups the other week on like a Zoom call, and honestly, this woman had a business that potentially, assuming her technology was good and whatnot, could be potentially $1 billion business. But she was projecting in her out years, like 2028, that like it would be amazing if she was making $10 million in revenue. And I'm like, no investor is going to be interested in that, right? And I actually asked her, because women never get asked these questions. They usually get asked questions by investors, like how they're going to mitigate risk or like that kind of thing. But no one ever asks a woman, how are you going to maximize this opportunity? Like what would like wild success look like to you? What do you think is your maximum amount? Like if all the stars aligned that you could make in 2028. And like, she should have said $1 billion, but like, she couldn't get there. She couldn't see it in herself, even though her company, based on like a 5-minute pitch with a scalable technology, had that potential, but she couldn't see it herself. And so I think women sometimes rule themselves out by being a little too cautious in their numbers. And like, I asked her twice.
You were trying to give her a hook. Yes.
I was trying to. And honestly, investors are not going to do that for you, right? I was trying to be really kind. I'm like, just raise your numbers.
Yeah. No, it's so true. It's so true. But how, like, because you've been through the mill several times, Melinda, how can you, like, what would you say? And you've mentored hundreds of women. Like, what would you say to somebody who has that mental block and who's ruling herself out, someone who is holding herself? So that woman who was not getting the cue, if you could speak frankly to her now, what would you tell her?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, what is stopping you? Like, there's a whole bunch of different, actually, this is a really interesting question, Anne. Thank you for asking that, because there's a different approach and it depends on the different situation. I can only really say what I'd be curious about is like, I would like to ask that woman, how would she feel who would she be if she was running $1 billion company? And that question is really difficult for women. Women struggle to imagine that. And I think that's part of the issue. So how do we figure out how to stand in that? Like literally, like imagining, writing down, drawing, whatever, like what would your life look like? What would you be doing with that kind of money? Because it triggers all those things that then trigger follow-up questions. This is a journalist in me speaking now.
Yeah.
Follow-up questions like, what about that is making you uncomfortable? What do you think you don't deserve it? Like, what would you have to do to deserve it? Who would you have to be to deserve it? Because I think there's a real block that all of us, for understandable historic reasons, and that we all have this that we need to recover from.
No, it's true. And there's the systemic ones. There could be the family ones. There could be the own internalized things. It could be past trauma. But with women, we tend to have that compounded. It's several layers.
It's fear. It's fear too. Because I think a lot of women, I remember this, Anne, when I was doing a retreat associated with a podcast just before the pandemic. And I was bringing together women for like a high performing entrepreneurs for this retreat. And the price point was like $7,500 for like, I'm sorry. Just a second.
No worries.
Loudly. Can I pick up on that?
Sure.
Guys, Finn, I'm on a podcast. Please.
I know what it's like. I do. It's all good. Right. Edit it out. Go on.
I'm just going to start that answer. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thank you.
Do.
All right. So, associated with my podcast back in 2019, before the pandemic, I was doing these retreats for high performing female entrepreneurs. These are women with 7-8 figure businesses. Price point was $7,500 for like a 3.5 day retreat and whatnot. And I remember on the sales calls, when I was trying to recruit people into this, I would say, well, it's time for all of us to get together and play a bigger game. And I noticed like there was this split second where I could see in their eyes this like fear, just like a bigger game. And it took me a while to understand that what they were feeling was like, oh my goodness, I'm already really busy. I'm already burnt out. Playing a bigger game, that means that I have to do more. And they couldn't see like I'm already doing like everything. How can I do more? And so I think a lot of women were ruling themselves out. And I don't know. I had this epiphany that it was just a lack of understanding of the power of leverage and why women are too late sometimes to hire, why sometimes we hire people to do things rather than return results, why we have a hard time asking for things or receiving things, or like think we have to do it all, right? Yeah. And like just really developing that delegation muscle. Like, yes, somebody won't do it exactly like you, but that doesn't matter. You may not love it 100%, but like you can't do everything. And to build a scalable business, to play that bigger game, you've got to be able to hire, inspire, create a team. Your role really changes as a CEO at that point, where it's not just you have a little small team, and that's fine. But to get to that scale piece, it's like you've got to almost be like a different person. You have to master that. And so I think that's where a lot of women get stuck in small business, and like service only type businesses, or just doing. Like it's a glass ceiling of our own architecture.
And I'm so glad that you've really opened up that box and to talk about the fear and the bigger game and thinking bigger. And I think, and the power of like what you were saying about leverage, thinking bigger and really projecting into the future, and actually understanding the power of money and in the positive sense. Because I think that's it, because we can get hung up on, I don't want to be too successful because this, and this, or I don't want too much money because this is. But then when you see the other side, when you see or walk in the shadow of very successful business people who have made the millions and who have a lifestyle, and you go, oh, I wish. But then you see the power, the freedom it gives them to have more choice and to have more time to make different decisions. 100%. That's what for me is like, it's an eye opener, because I don't have the millions yet. I hope to have the millions, and I'm working to have the millions. And I am working on all of those things to move things forward. And I see some of my friends who are, thankfully, I'm so proud of them in those positions, and learning from them and saying, my God, it is a completely different world that you live in when you don't have to worry about money, where you can basically manage your time whichever you want, have several businesses on the go, have several projects on the go, and be able to pick up and do whatever you want because you have that financial freedom. It is life changing, and I've had the privilege of, being in the shadow of some people like that, and it's like, wow, I definitely want that. Like, it's like now,
100%.
But I think I wasn't ready. To your point, Melinda, I wasn't ready to allow myself to dream or think that big in the past, but now I am.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It's a process. And so in the realm of advice, I mean, it's interesting. I was looking at the Forbes 50 over 50 list, for instance, and there's a lot of young women in a hurry, and I was one, right, where everything had to be done by the time I was 30, and then everything had to be done by the time I was 40 or whatever, right? I think women are kind of interesting. I think we're at our best as entrepreneurs in our 40s, 50s, and 60s, even into our 70s, actually. We're kind of like unstoppable. And it doesn't have to be a rush. And you'll get there, right? It is definitely a journey.
Yeah.
And understanding that leverage piece, I think, is really important. I think the other part, though, is a fear that we think, oh, if I'm a really strong woman, maybe I won't get a man, or other women won't like me. I'll be cast out of the tribe.
Yeah.
And this is why your family is not the same as your business family.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Because your family will be projecting all their fears onto you, and they'll be dissuading you from things and making you, because they're threatened a little bit, but they also, I mean, they're even if their hearts are in the best place, subconsciously, they're a little bit destabilized by like, you're going to leave them behind and that kind of thing. Right. So like, even if they mean well, so you need to surround yourself with people who are genuinely excited about your big success.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely vital, because it's hard enough. Yeah. And it's isolating enough. Like I remember when my kids were small and being in the school, like drop off or whatever. And like all the other moms thought I was a freak. Like there was no way I was going to be able to show up with all the muffins or all the, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so, and that was weird, because you can feel a little bit, and we want to, I think as women, we want to belong. So it's that kind of fear, I think, of being shunned that is a part of this as well. And just like the more we can come into kind of conscious, I'm very spiritual. So the more we can come into this kind of conscious awareness, or just being aware of what we're feeling, and kind of like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder, right? When you get triggered by something or whatever. And just being aware and just moving through that's I joke that if you want therapy, just become an entrepreneur. It will provide.
It does. But joking aside, I know that it's so important for entrepreneurs to actually go to therapy. It's a really important thing. And I know that some investors are like, yeah, no problem. You can put it as a business expense, because like, we need you to be on top of your game. And if you need to go and have a sound box over there and get your head sorted out there, all good, because we know that you're looking after yourself and work through your.
I joke with Steve with Zero Limits Capital that, I don't know if you ever watched the series Billions, about sort of the hedge fund world or whatever, but this firm had an in-house kind of therapist. Yeah. And the character was Wendy. And I kind of say, like, every VC, every startup kind of like needs their Wendy,
But it's true. It's true. And even if the therapist, and most of them don't come from the startup world, of course they don't understand, and they don't have to be an entrepreneur therapist as such, but it just can help with perspective and help pull out because of all the power dynamics and all the things that we have to negotiate with investors, with customers, with team members, with suppliers. It can be just so good because we're so in the weeds. They can just pull your head out and say, okay, now I can see how you're managing this type of situation is coming across, it's polluting these other areas that you're working on, and you better fix it there so that then it won't pollute. That's all helpful. And I think I just pulled it up when you said about becoming aware about what you're feeling, and I think that it's very important for founders to look after themselves, particularly women founders, because we're drained and pulled in so many ways that you said. And I also love that you talked about the 50 over 50, and because it's true, there is always a rush to be the 30 over 30. And then there was a 40 over 40. Now there's a 50 over 50. And it would be even better if there's a 60 over 60. That'd be amazing.
I'll be a 60 over 60. And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, hey, so, but listen.
I still qualify for the 50 over 50.
Yes,
so.
me too. Like we're in there. Okay, so what's your parting message, Melinda? I know we kind of talked a few things, but if you had to sum it up, what would you like the listeners to kind of get from this conversation?
Okay, so depending on who you are, if you are a content creator, which just about everybody is this day, okay, in this day and age, my dream for you, okay, is that you will be empowered through the creation of your content and the value of your own voice to be able to support your family and your dreams just by putting your voice to a microphone or your visage to a photo or a video. Like, I am in this to change that dynamic. So you own your own data, you own your own community, and you can literally support yourself and your business, right? And I want that for you. So this is what Podopolo is all about. We really encourage you to be part of the Podopolo family. The easiest way to start is by downloading the Podopolo app, whether you're a listener or a podcaster, checking out our website. We've got a lot of things, a lot of product launches and things coming in the fall that we're really, really excited about. Of course, if you're an investor, invest in Padopolo. It's a multi-billion-dollar company, changing a whole global ecosystem, addressing the largest markets, like with a team that has 16 exits between us. Like, come on, it's a no-brainer. Yes. So please get in touch with me, Melinda@Padopolo.com. That's really easy. If you're a female founder, I really encourage you to listen to my podcast, Wings of Inspired Business, because in a long back catalog, it's 900 episodes with women who talk really openly about their journeys, their epiphanies along the way, much like this conversation. And you have to come on my podcast too, by the way.
I'd love to be. Yes.
Check that out. And if you are a female founder and you want to get, featured on it, you can ping me again at Melinda@Padopolo.com and such. We can get you scheduled so you can tell the story of your business and such, and we can send some business your way. So those are kind of all the ways that I can think of. I'm kind of, I use LinkedIn more than any other social platform at the moment. I do some stuff on, Instagram, but I find a lot of the social media sites kind of a time suck, and they don't necessarily, I can hardly wait for the day, or I can just hire someone to do my social media for me. That's kind of how I feel about it. But you'll get to me on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Well, we'll make sure that we have all those links in the show notes. And investors, you have an opportunity. Do not miss the window. You will be kicking yourselves. You will say, "Oh, Padopolo is one I let go." Do not put yourself in that position. You've heard Melinda. Honestly, she's amazing, as you can tell. What you've built with Padopolo is amazing. I'm super excited for this next round. I cannot wait to see what happens next. And it's an open opportunity for you. An open up invitation to you, Melinda. I want to say in X months' time, I don't know when it will be. I want you back so you can tell us the other side of the story, and then what's been happening next in the blockchain, et cetera, et cetera.
I know exactly what's going to happen. The minute the money closes, right? It's super busy. We're recruiting, onboarding. We got PR efforts, the marketing efforts, more product. It's going to be very, very busy. And I think in that phase of a business where you're growing really quickly, another little bit of advice, just self-care. So I'm thinking a lot right now in this little quiet period in August of what does my life look like? How do I navigate this personally? So that I don't burn out and, that kind of thing. Right. But it's exciting.
That's so exciting. Well, listen, thank you so much for sharing this part of the journey so far with us, Melinda. To be continued, ... is all I'm going to say. All the best for closing this round. We know it's going to happen super soon. And as I say, investors, you still have an opportunity. Jump in while you can. And thank you so much, Melinda. And I look forward to having you on the podcast again for the next part.
And thank you so much. Thank you for who you're being in the world and everything you're doing. It's amazing, very inspiring.
Thank you.